Okay, so now that that's saved, let's go ahead and put in our Aurora Borealis. So I want to mix up the color for this, and I'm going to come into here and I want a little bit greenish, kind of glowing kind of feel. So we'll go with some of this. And let's see, how does that look? I think that'll work pretty good. All right, so now I have one over here called wood grain, and this is kind of the look that it gives, right? Is this kind of thing. So I think that's going to be a really good streaky brush to mess around with for this. So I'm just going to kind of come in and curve it around and kind of keeping it vertical. And maybe streak in a little bit more here. And maybe a bit more here. Okay, now that's going to be a huge compositional thing where it's going to really, this is basically giving an arrow pointing down to here. So that's going to mean a couple things. One, this is going to become our main focus, this mountain is. It's also going to bring a lot of weight to the painting. So we're going to need to offset it. So I'll probably end up doing something down here that has a little bit of light to it and interest. So that way you'll come in through here and kind of down and then maybe back over through here and then back up. So anyway, something you've got to think about when you're doing these is how you want the composition, where you want the viewer's eyes to go. Okay. Streak in a few here and there, because some of these I'm going to actually, like these, I'm going to obliterate, but I want them there just for the color. Okay, so I'm going to go to 4, and then what I want to do here is just kind of go over these and blend them out a little bit. So like I said, I'm going to obliterate some of these a lot. These here, I'm going to continue that up and down motion, which will give it that kind of a wispy feel. Like so. And I could use the blending tool again, but this has these streaks in it that I want. So that's why I'm using it. Kind of drag some of this over and then wisp it around a little bit. The same thing on this one. Okay, so I think that is giving us that really nice they seem be fading. So these right here, I want to, just like I did with those over there, I want to kind of fade them out, but I really want this to have kind of a all slant to it, like so. There we go. And let's kind of fade these together a little bit. I don't want that to be such a distinct difference. Maybe even kind of a little bit of vertical to that as well. So I think that's really kind of pulling together some of that interesting look that the Borealis has. And maybe just a few here there that kind of soften, come around. Yeah, that gives it a little bit of movement, gives it a little interest. I'm going to go back to 1 and I'm going to bring this brush down. I want to add just a little bit more in here. Just kind of streak that in and go back to 4 and soften it. And just to clarify, when I say back to 4, remember these are 1, 2, paint and mix, 3, paint and blend, 4, blend, 5, erase. Okay, so when I say back to 1, I'm talking about these brush sets here that are part of Rebelle. Kind of soften it around. And streak the bottom of these a little bit. I think that'll definitely work for now. Kind of streak this across. People into the painting. Okay. I am going to go to the blending tool, and it's on soft 2. I'm going to bring this up. A little bit too much streakiness in this side part right here, so I'm just going to kind of soften that a little bit because I think it gives it more of that glow. But I still want some of the streaks, but I just want a little bit more of type of glow here. Using my bracket keys to quickly size it. There we go. So I think that's going to give us a good blend of the two. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to bring this over a little bit. Excellent. Okay, so I think that's going to definitely work for what we need. Like so. Okay. So it's just a matter of going back and forth and building the textures that you want. Now I want to carry a little bit of this down here into the water. So I'm actually going to stay on this layer instead of going to the lake layer. And I'll go to the airbrush. And I'm going to select just a little bit of this color there. And just kind of slightly here. So it adds a little bit, and then I'm going to go back to the blending tool, and again, very vertical kind of a feel, like so, and then I'm going to come up in size and really just kind of pull down. That's subtle, but it does add something, okay? Excuse me. So that gives us the Aurora Borealis part there. And next, we need to go in and kind of lay in some of the snow here. So let's come back up to our mountains. And for the color here, I want to kind of mix something. So there is a mixing palette thing that you can use right here. So mixing palette, all right? If you bring that up, it lets you mix excuse me, it lets you mix on this palette here. Okay, so like if I wanted to mix some of these colors, then I could put those there and kind of play around with mixing them together type stuff. Okay, I like doing it on here, so I think this is a great tool. It's just not one that I like to use, because for me, going here, then going here, then going here, it's just too much back and forth. So clear, and all right, so I'm going to mix on my palette, on my canvas here instead. Now one of the things I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a layer above this so that I can mix on this, and I'm going to switch to my oil brush, and I'm going to switch to, let's just go to my oily round. And I know I want some of this kind of color, but I want to add a little bit of purple to it. And then just a little bit of blue and a little bit of white. Okay. Now I'm going to go to my blending tool. I'm going to bring the size down. And I want to just kind of smear these together. Okay. And that's going to give me kind of this dirty off-color white. Okay. So now I'm just going to take Alt and select on it. And I can even press T to transform the layer. But since this is the only thing on the layer, I'll just bring it over here out of my way. And now I'm going to paint the mountains more. Okay, and then we'll go in and add some of the stuff here for this foreground snow. But I want to do these, and I know for these back here, I want them to be a little bit darker blue. So we'll go with something maybe like that, just a touch darker, like so. I'll come back up to my stencils. And I have a mountain stencil here that I use. Turn off lock size ratio. So now I can just drag and twist this around and basically make an infinite number of rocks with it. Right click on it and drag it. And I'm going to go back to my brush, bring my size down, and just kind of paint this in. And move it around like so. Not even really worrying about staying in the lines of the mountainside here, because I will go back and cut it back to where it needs to be. Now, one thing to tell you, which I don't know if I did or not, I probably not, but I always keep a preview window on another monitor for two reasons. One is it lets me see a zoomed out version of what I'm doing. The other is that monitor gives me a very good idea of what a printed version of this is going to look like. Oops. So that's why I always keep that going there, so I can not only glance up and look to see, hey, is this color looking right, but also is the does it look going to look right for a print? Got that up there. So when you saw me like paint something and then get rid of it, it's because on the other one it didn't look right. And I recommend doing that if you're going to use stencils like I do, because stencils are just such time savers that it works really well. So now I'm using this oily round. I can also go to my mountain brush, which is really kind of why this one was invented and made, was because it gives me that streakiness that I want. But part of the reason I'm not at the moment is because it does give me a decent amount of breaks in texture, which equates to detail, and that detail makes it look closer. Okay, so I'm not so much doing it on some of these back here because I don't want those to look closer. Okay, it just gives a crisper edge, and I don't want that right now. So I'm actually going to go to press 4 and soften this back, and then also come down here and kind of soften these on the bottom. And this is going to give me that feeling of light fading around some of it. Okay, like so. I can kind of go up and curve it so it looks like maybe there's a snow drift, like so. All right, and that gives me some nice subtle areas off in the distance. Kind of blends out some of the details like that. And so that's going to work with that. So let me go over here. Now these, like this mountain and these mountains, are kind of, in my mind, are kind of on the same plane. So I want to give them some of the similar kind of look and feel. So that way they kind of look like the atmospheric perspective is the same. And remember, atmospheric perspective is really not hard. The further stuff away, well, what I started to say, the further stuff away is, the lighter it gets. However, in a nighttime scene, that's almost reversed. The further something away is, the darker it gets, but the kind of the bluer kind of feel that it gets to it, which makes it seem in the distance. But Anyway, hopefully that made sense. So that's what I'm doing right now, is just... I did right click and drag my canvas, by the way. I want to tilt this to stretch it. Something like that. Because these shadows, press 1 to go back to this. These shadows are going to kind of dictate what direction this mountain is facing. Okay, now see how that has more detail to it? It's crisper than this, so it looks closer than these. So again, press 4, go in and just kind of soften, just real lightly, over some of these. Go in the direction that the mountain is going so that the streaks kind of follow it. Like so. And that gives us an interesting kind of pushed off kind of feel. Like that. Okay. So I've got those there. So now I want to grab a little bit of this greenish color. And let's see, how does that look? It's a little bright. So let's come down a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Control Z to undo those. Drag this over. Rotate it around to get some that I like. Just kind of softly paint it in. So, oops, move it. Press 4. Go back over and soften it. So because this has some green in it, it's warmer. So even though it's not a quote-unquote highlight, it's going to feel like a highlight. And I don't want to get rid of all my different colors here by overly softening this. But I do want to just kind of play it around so that it sits. But see how that kind of gives you the warmth of feeling like it's got the light coming from here, reflecting onto it. It gives you that nice subtle feel. Okay. So we've got that there. We've got those mountains. And now we can do the foreground mountain. And then we'll come in and add a little bit more through here. And then this is where this line through here is where the foreground itself is going to start, like the midground and foreground. So really this mountain's midground. These are background mountains. And then this is going to be foreground. Okay. So I want to grab this color here to, because I like the thought of having this kind of pushed back in here. So I'm going to press 1. Like so. And this one I'm going to build up in a couple different layers. Okay. So it's almost like it'll have layers of different reflections. But I'm going to keep these crisp feel to it. Pull it more forward. Itself to kind of come down like so. And so I can just kind of freehand it, or I can grab my stencil and save myself some trouble. Oops. I want some of these gaps of color to be a little bit bigger. Because by having, here I'll show, well, let me finish this and I'll show you what I mean. Let me throw this in here. Okay, so even though this color is similar to that color, The bigger gaps make it look forward because it gives it more detail, okay, or more hints of detail, I should say. So now I'm going to grab some of this, and here I want to kind of add a little bit of a glow to this part. Now again, that's just going to add more interest. And I'm just using the mountain brush and really lightly going over it and letting it kind of drop in what it wants to drop in. But by having this here, that's going to bring that forward a lot. Okay, now I'm going to push 4 and kind of soften some of this. I don't want to soften it too much, but I want to blend it in. Like so. Now I'm just kind of throwing in some, but see how I've got this dark right here, and then I've got this light right here? That separates that. It pushes that back. I'm just going to go a little vertical on some of this. So, bring that around. Okay. So I think that's going to start really bringing that over. Now what I want to do is a little bit of this color. See how this looks. It's a little neon. So let's drop it in value. Still a little bright. But I think what I'll do is I'll use some of that down here to start laying in some softer snow areas. Like so. And then switch to 4, get this out of my way. Switch to 4 and just kind of so I want this to look really like it's pulling forward into this midground, from the midground to the foreground. And just kind of carry it up. And around. Okay. Now I'm going to switch over here to my oily round because I don't want these rough edges here. And switch back to 1 real quick. I want this to look more like a softer snow, not rocks. So kind of transition point. So I think that's going to give me some of the look that I want. And I'm going to grab from this color, and I'm going to go back to my mountain brush. And let's see, how does that look? Still pretty close. It's a little bit lighter. Yep. What I want to do, come over towards, not that far, just a slight bit of purple in it. Like that. And I'm going to come back up here. And rotate. And add in a little bit of this purplish color. Like so. This, how does that look on that side? Grab a little bit of this color. I think that's going to work, but I want to go just a shade lighter. And touch greener. And a touch darker. And a 4 because I want to soften that. to be quite so overbearing. So 1 and then 4. One, 4. And 3. I just want to kind of carry some of that paint around. So this is, you know, kind of a little different color palette, but I don't know, kind of digging it. So I think that'll work, and then I'll add another highlight layer here just a little bit. So that's kind of pulling some of this green in here, some of the purplish colors, really giving that night scene. But again, because I've got some of this stuff here, let me hit backspace, get rid of the stencil. That really pops that forward and pulls some of this. And now I could grab just a touch of this color right here and add a little bit at the tops. These, and then go a little more white into them, and then even a little more white. So I'm staying the same value. I'm just adding, I'm lightening the color itself up, but I'm not changing its value. I'm just changing how much white is in there, which relatively gives it a different look and feel for it. So it stays in the similar value, stays in the same value range, but because it's white, it looks lighter, even though this is nowhere near white color. And so now I can use these in a little bit to add. But that warm color is going to pull it forward a little bit more. Okay. All right. So I think that's going to give us that part. So let's move on to this foreground here and get that. So I'm going to save this real quick, and then we'll get started with part 3.